He thought her silence meant defeat, but silence is not surrender. Silence is an execution without blood. It is the softest sound that can make a man remember his own insignificance. Imagine this. A woman who once spoke in warmth, who pleaded to be understood, who twisted herself into softness just to be chosen. Now she no longer asks. Her eyes no longer seek approval. She watches instead with that quiet stillness that turns men restless. Because when a woman stops begging, the illusion of male control begins to rot. There is a point when her voice disappears and something else takes its place, the kind of calm that frightens even the strongest man. He senses that she has stepped beyond his reach, beyond validation, beyond the need to be seen. He calls her cold, detached, cruel. But he knows deep down that what he calls cruelty is merely her evolution. He mistook her warmth for weakness. He mistook her empathy for invitation. He mistook her love for permission to dominate. Now she stands before him unbent, unyielding, untouchable. The paradox burns in his mind. The more she withdraws, the deeper his hunger grows. The more she turns away, the stronger his obsession becomes. Because in the absence of her attention, he faces himself. And what he sees there is unbearable, a man built on borrowed significance. Every man carries a wound, an ancient hunger to be admired, to be mirrored by a woman who reflects his power back to him. Without her gaze, he feels invisible. Without her softness, his armor turns to stone around his own emptiness. This is the masculine wound, the terror of being unremarkable. So he seeks her out, not to love her, but to silence his own fear. But she too once carried a wound. The feminine wound, the dread of being abandoned, the ache of being too much, the shame of existing in fullness. She learned to shrink, to please, to beg for scraps of affection. She learned to twist her truth into shapes small enough to be loved, until one day something inside her cracked. The begging stopped. The pleasing died. She turned inward and saw that her worth had never been measured by who stayed, but by who trembled when she finally walked away. The moment she stopped explaining, she became dangerous. Her silence no longer sought reconciliation. It became a weapon. Her absence no longer meant loss, it became judgment. Because when a woman disappears into herself, she awakens the archetype buried in her shadow. The witch, the siren, the one who cannot be possessed, only experienced. Her power does not roar, it whispers. It does not demand, it denies. He will try to provoke her. He will insult her, hoping for a spark of emotion. But she gives none. He will speak of her coldness, her pride, her mystery. Yet every word will betray his obsession. Because she is no longer part of his game, she has become the mirror in which he sees his own need. And nothing is more painful to the male ego than realizing that the woman he tried to break has transcended him entirely. She is no longer the girl who explained. She is the woman who watches in silence as he unravels before her. Every step he takes toward her is a descent into his own unconscious. He sees her everywhere, in dreams, in strangers, in the spaces between words. She has become the ghost of his unfinished work. Because every man who meets such a woman must confront the part of himself that is unfulfilled, unhealed, unwhole. You can feel her energy even now. It does not shout. It hums in the dark like a slow-burning fire. It calls something primal in you: fear, fascination, desire. You want to understand her, but understanding her would mean losing control. She exists to remind you that no amount of dominance can tame mystery. So you study her silence like a map, searching for clues. But there are none, because her power lies in what she does not reveal. The moment you think you've found her pattern, she vanishes. The moment you think she's yours, she dissolves. She is the shadow of every woman who ever stopped explaining herself. The one who realized that withholding attention is the purest form of command. Tonight, remember this. The woman you cannot possess is the one who will change you. Not because she gives, but because she withdraws. Her silence is the lesson. Her distance is the mirror. Her absence is the initiation. He stands before her, but it feels like standing before a mirror that does not reflect. The silence between them is no longer empty. It is charged with judgment, with power, with truth too sharp to bear. He feels small in her presence, though she has said nothing. That is her mastery. She does not need to lower his pride. She simply lets it collapse under its own weight. Once she used to justify herself. She wanted to be understood. She wanted to prove that her intentions were pure, her heart sincere. Now she has learned that explanation is a form of begging, a disguised plea for acceptance, and a woma. N who begs for understanding invites her own diminishment. So she stopped, and when she stopped, something in him broke. He called her heartless, but what he really meant was, she no longer feeds my illusion. He called her mysterious, but what he really meant was, I cannot control her narrative. Because in a world where women are taught to confess, apologize, and soothe, silence becomes her rebellion. Every man projects his shadow onto her. He sees in her what he cannot face in himself. To the weak, she appears cruel. To the insecure, she appears dangerous. To the unhealed, she appears unattainable. But she is none of these things. She is simply sovereign. She no longer seeks validation through submission. She no longer bargains with her presence. She has reclaimed her energy from every wound that once drained her. There is a particular kind of beauty that emerges from a woman who has faced her own darkness and survived it. It is not the beauty of youth or softness, but of depth, the beauty of a storm that has learned to restrain its own lightning. Her calmness unnerves because it is not ignorance. It is control. It is knowledge held like a blade behind her gaze. He cannot name it, but he feels it. That pull not toward her body, but toward her energy. It is not lust, though he will call it that. It is not love, though he might mistake it for such. It is recognition. Somewhere in her silence, he senses the echo of his own soul. The anima within him, the feminine principle, longs to unite with her, but it cannot. Because she does not meet him as a lover. She meets him as an archetype, a mirror to his incompleteness. Every man desires the woman who mirrors his ideal, but he fears the one who mirrors his truth. The first soothes his ego, the second shatters it. She is the second. She does not reflect his image, she reveals his shadow. He comes to her seeking validation and finds exposure instead. Her eyes hold the weight of what he hides from himself. His masks crumble, his posturing collapses. The power dynamic reverses without a single word being spoken. In her presence, men unravel, not because she manipulates, but because she refuses to perform. There is nothing for them to feed on. She offers no flattery, no comfort, no emotional labor. She offers only truth, silent, sharp, unyielding. And truth is unbearable to those who have built themselves upon illusion. He senses her pulling away, not in distance, but in vibration. Her silence stretches between them like a mirror to his own desperation. He speaks louder, but the louder he becomes, the smaller he feels. She does not respond. She simply is asterisk. This stillness is the highest form of dominance because it denies reaction. And in a world addicted to reaction, the one who does not respond becomes godlike. This is how the dark feminine reigns, not through seduction but through restraint, not through chaos but through command. She does not chase. She does not compete. She simply removes herself, and her absence becomes the gravity that pulls everything toward her. Men will orbit her long after she is gone, haunted by the echo of her stillness. You may think this power is cruelty, but it is not. It is justice. It is the law of energy. What is no longer valued withdraws its presence. What is disrespected reclaims its silence. The world taught her to give endlessly. Now she has learned the sacred discipline of withholding. Tonight, you are asked to learn the same. Sit in your own silence. Do not explain yourself to those who twist your truth. Do not offer softness to those who mistake it for surrender. Let your stillness become the altar where the unworthy reveal themselves. Watch how quickly noise destroys itself when met with quiet. The woman who no longer pleads becomes myth. The man who cannot handle her silence remains boy. There comes a moment when the world realizes she cannot be possessed, and that moment marks her coronation. The throne she sits upon is not made of gold, but of distance. It is built from every time she refused to explain, from every time she chose silence over performance, solitude over spectacle. Her kingdom is invisible to those who crave validation, because its walls are woven from restraint. He feels it the moment she leaves the room. The air changes, the noise fades. Something in him collapses into that empty space she once filled. He reaches for her in memory, trying to resurrect her through imagination, but even the thought of her is now out of reach. What remains is not her image, but her effect. The trace of her discipline, the sting of her withdrawal. He will call it mystery, he will call it allure, but what he truly feels is grief. The grief of losing a mirror that once made him feel significant. He will chase others, but it will not work, because desire born from absence cannot be satisfied by presence. She became the embodiment of what he cannot control, and that is the essence of her power. She is the ungraspable. The more he tries to define her, the further she slips through his perception. She exists beyond comprehension, beyond naming, beyond need. Men like him are raised to conquer, to win, to dominate, but there is no strategy that works against silence. No weapon that wounds absence, and this is where his structure collapses. Every argument, every manipulation, every tactic, all useless against the one who no longer reacts, because power does not come from what you can control. Power comes from what you can walk away from without turning back. She is no longer flesh to him. She is a haunting, the echo of what he could not understand, the embodiment of his unfinished individuation. She represents everything his ego denies: vulnerability, surrender, reflection. The more he resists, the more she consumes his thoughts. This is the law of the unconscious. What you repress will rule you. He begins to dream of her. In those dreams, she is both angel and serpent, goddess and executioner. Sometimes she kisses him, sometimes she kills him. He wakes sweating, uncertain if he fears her or worships her. That confusion is his initiation, the meeting of his anima, the confrontation with his shadow. The part of him he tried to control is now confronting him in her form. She is not his enemy, she is his mirror, but his ego cannot tell the difference. This is the secret of the dark feminine. She is not cruel for cruelty's sake. She is the embodiment of consequence. Every man who disrespects her depth must face his own shallowness. Every man who mocks her sensitivity must confront his emotional poverty. She is not punishing him. She is awakening him, but awakening feels like destruction to those who built themselves on sleep. Her silence is not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of mastery. She has walked through heartbreak, through betrayal, through every desperate plea for love that returned empty. She has bled her innocence into wisdom. She no longer seeks peace through others, she carries it like a weapon. Her softness still exists, but it is selective now, sacred, untouchable. Not everyone deserves to witness it. You may feel uncomfortable hearing this. You may sense your own reflection trembling beneath the surface. That is good. The discomfort is proof that truth is working. Every person carries within them both the seducer and the deceived, the dominator and the destroyed. To deny this is to remain half-formed. To accept it is to begin the path of integration. So listen carefully. The woman men cannot stop desiring is not the most beautiful, not the most charming, not even the most kind. She is the most whole asterisk. She has met every part of herself, the tender, the brutal, the abandoned, the divine, and refused to disown any of it. Her allure is not in her mystery, but in her completeness. And completeness terrifies the incomplete. You too must learn this art, to no longer chase validation, to no longer explain your worth, to no longer confuse love with permission. Power begins where justification ends. Tonight, withdraw your energy from where it leaks. Observe who panics when you grow quiet. Watch who tries to lure you back into noise. That is your test. That is your mirror. He begins to resent her peace. It mocks him. How can she remain so still when he is unraveling? How can her absence carry more weight than his presence? He does not understand that calmness is the final form of power, the storm that learned to govern itself. What he sees as detachment is the highest form of control. She is no longer at war with emotion. She commands it. He tries to provoke her once more. The wounded masculine always does. He hurls words meant to sting, to awaken her old self, the one who argued, cried, explained. But she has buried that version deep beneath the soil of her awakening. His insults fall like stones into water, they sink without a sound. And that silence crushes him more than any response ever could. He calls her heartless because she no longer feeds his hunger. He calls her arrogant because she no longer bows. But the truth is simple. She no longer performs servitude under the guise of love. She has severed the invisible leash that made her dependent on approval. This is not pride, it is emancipation. It is the return to sovereignty that terrifies those still addicted to control. She has become the shadow queen, the archetype that rules without needing to be seen. Her crown is unseen, but it weighs on the air. Her gaze cuts without words. She is not interested in domination through chaos, but through composure. There is no scream, no plea, no demand. Only the quiet authority of someone who knows she can have what she wants and therefore no longer needs to chase it. The more she pulls inward, the more the world begins to orbit her. It is a paradox older than myth. The siren does not chase, she waits, and in her waiting she becomes irresistible, her stillness becalm. Ease the gravity that pulls restless men toward their undoing. They sense that something in her refuses to belong, and that defiance awakens both desire and dread. He begins to realize that what he wanted was never her body, nor even her affection, but her surrender. He wanted to see his power reflected in her submission, but she denied him that. She forced him to see that his dominance was fragile, conditional, built on the weakness of others. Without her reaction, his ego collapses. Her silence becomes a mirror where he witnesses his own dependency. And that is unbearable. She is not cruel, she is necessary. Because a man who has never been rejected by a woman in her power has never truly met himself. Only through her absence does he encounter the void inside him, the space he has filled with conquest, validation, and noise. Now stripped of her attention, he meets the truth. He has no self beyond his reflection in others. Her detachment exposes his illusion, and that exposure is the beginning of his potential rebirth if he can bear it, if he can face the emptiness without trying to fill it, if he can sit in the silence she left behind and listen, because her silence is not punishment. It is an invitation to grow, to integrate, to evolve. But few accept it. Most will try to replace her. They will seek another woman to mirror the old illusion, to silence the same insecurity. They will repeat the pattern, never realizing that what they chase is not her, but the missing part of themselves. The feminine they abandoned, the vulnerability they exiled, the tenderness they learned to mock. She, meanwhile, has ascended. She no longer lives in the polarity of victim or goddess. She moves beyond both. Her identity is not built on rebellion, but on balance. Her strength is not born of defiance alone, but of harmony with her own darkness. She knows her rage, but she does not worship it. She knows her softness, but she does not offer it cheaply. She lives as a paradox, the destroyer and the healer, the silence and the storm. And this is why men cannot stop desiring her, because she represents what they crave and fear most, the integration they have not achieved. To stand before her is to confront one's own fragmentation. To lose her is to lose the illusion of control. And to desire her is to desire one's own awakening, though it feels like destruction. You too must learn to become that mirror, to no longer explain your silence, to no longer perform your strength. Let your absence speak louder than your words. Let others confront their own hollowness when you withdraw your energy. Do not chase reconciliation, let the noise devour itself. Tonight, practice the art of detachment. Look upon those who drain you with the serenity of one who knows they cannot touch what has already transcended. Do not argue. Do not plead. Simply turn inward. Every empire falls before silence. By now, the air around her feels different, still, heavy, sacred. She has become something rare in a world that feeds on attention. She has become unreachable, not because she hides, but because she no longer participates. The current of her energy no longer leaks into places unworthy of her presence. She walks through the same world, yet the world no longer touches her. This is what true power feels like: quiet, detached, absolute. He sees her again, perhaps months later. She does not flinch. There is no performance, no bitterness, no warmth either. Only that unnerving calm, the silence of one who has already mourned what others are still clinging to. She does not need revenge. His own mind will do that for her, because every man haunted by a woman like her punishes himself. The memory of her restraint burns longer than any act of vengeance. He will try to recreate her in others. He will search for her eyes, her composure, her stillness. But no imitation will hold, because what he desires is not her face, it is the peace he felt in her presence before his ego destroyed it. And peace cannot be owned. It can only be matched. Until he evolves to meet her level, he will be forever exiled from it. This is the cruel mercy of the dark feminine. She does not destroy through wrath. She destroys through truth. Her very existence divides men from boys, illusion from awareness, desire from devotion. She is the threshold between the unconscious and the divine. To cross it, one must die symbolically, die to pride, to control, to the addiction of being worshipped. And few are willing to face that death. She was not born this way. She was made. Through betrayal, through abandonment, through the slow erosion of innocence. Every heartbreak taught her the same lesson, that love without self-respect is self-erasure. That kindness without discernment is slavery. That devotion without boundaries is death. She died many small deaths before learning how to live without apology. And now she gives nothing she does not choose. To some she seems cold. To those who understand, she is purity incarnate, stripped of need, stripped of illusion, stripped of every performative mask. Her energy no longer flutters outward to please. It radiates inward, stable, unwavering. This is why people feel her before they see her. Presence like that cannot be faked. It is forged. The witch archetype has risen in her, not the one of fairy tales, but the one of truth. The one who knows the secret law: what you withhold grows stronger. She knows that attention is the modern form of worship, and she refuses to give hers freely. Every time she withdraws, the world leans closer. Men lean closer, because scarcity breeds value and silence breeds obsession. He feels it again, that ache, that hunger. He cannot name it, but it consumes him. It is not lust, though it burns hotter than desire. It is not love, though it feels like devotion. It is the ache of incompletion, the void where her reflection used to live. He cannot rest because he still needs her to see him, and she never will again. That is the punishment, not hatred, not revenge, indifference. And yet, in this indifference lies the possibility of his awakening. Because when the external source of validation vanishes, one is forced to turn inward, to confront the emptiness that screams when no one applauds. She has given him that gift, the gift of solitude disguised as exile. Whether he learns from it or drowns in it is no longer her concern. Her role in his story is complete. You, too, must learn the art of completion, to know when the lesson has ended and to stop bleeding energy into what refuses to grow. Do not chase closure. Closure is a myth invented by those afraid of endings. Real closure is silence. It is the quiet acceptance that some things were meant to die without explanation. Let your absence become your final word. Let your peace become your revenge. Let your indifference become the proof of your evolution. Because when you no longer need to be understood, you have become untouchable. The opinions of others lose their power when you no longer build yourself around their approval. The feminine that once begged now reigns. The heart that once shattered now commands. The silence that once felt like defeat has become divinity. And so it ends where it began, in quiet. Not submission, not surrender, just stillness. The kind that carries the weight of understanding, the kind that births new worlds in its wake. The woman who knows her worth does not argue, she vanishes.